Hi, my name is Doug Flanders, and thank you so much for joining us for LUMC's Safer Sanctuary Policy Training. This, of course, is pre-recorded, so we do thank you for taking the time to do this. Usually we try to do this once a year, live training, but since you were not able to make that, we thank you for joining us here today to be able to go through this on your own time. And then afterwards, you can fill out a form and then provide that to our ministries. This is very important, so we thank you for doing this. And if you do have any questions afterwards, please feel free to reach out to anybody with the Staff Parish Relations Committee, SPRC, or you can reach out to Lisa Perkins, who is the Director of Children's and Families Ministry, or you can reach out to Hannah Lawley, who is the Director of Youth and Young Adults Ministry, and they'll be more than happy to answer any questions. So why don't we just go ahead and jump right in. So you can see from our agenda, we have quite a few things we're going to talk about. But also, as we're moving forward on this, if you happen to be on a computer, please take your phone and just scan this QR code, and it'll take you right to our Safer Sanctuary policy document. Because you will see as we go, you'll see policy page numbers, and you'll be able to follow along. If you're watching this on your phone, I apologize. You may not be able to pull that up and go and be able to do this as we go. But again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. So here's the agenda. Hopefully this will take about 40 minutes as we can move forward. At Littleton United Methodist Church, we do believe in creating a nurturing environment for everyone. And this policy, the Safer Sanctuary policy, is crafted to honor Jesus's example of welcoming children and vulnerable adults. Our commitment is to safeguard our community, ensuring a safe haven for all. So thank you for joining us again on the importance of a safer sanctuary. Again, if you look on the bottom left-hand side of that, it says policy page 1. That'll show you where we are within the document itself. So why do we have a safer sanctuary policy? It's really threefold. One is biblical. Jesus gathered the children and blessed them. It's his teaching that inspire this safer sanctuary policy. The other one is protection. In 1996, the General Conference mandated that every United Methodist Church to implement some form of a safe sanctuary policy. The Littleton United Methodist Church has had a safe sanctuary policy for a number of years. We updated this a few years back, and so now this is why we call it the Safer Sanctuary Policy due to these updates. And we will be updating our policy periodically as well. So our aim is to protect infants, youth, vulnerable adults, and anyone affiliated within our church. And the third is, of course, it is required. It's essential for compliance and requirements with the Brotherhood Mutual Insurance coverage that we have for Littleton United Methodist Church. And so why do we have it? It's biblical. It's the protection of those who need it the most, and also it's required. So what's the purpose of our policy? The purpose of our policy is to provide a safe haven for everyone. It's pretty simple. We prioritize the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual well-being of all of our attendees, of all of our youth, of all of our children, and our vulnerable adults. It aims to foster a supportive environment for them and their faith development. We want to make sure that they feel comfortable coming to Littleton United Methodist Church, learning more about their faith and growing in their faith, and just making this a place that they want to be. And so together, we can all create this community where everyone feels safe and valued. Our goals are protection and prevention. This policy lays down guidelines to protect minors and vulnerable adults effectively. It encompasses prevention against inappropriate behaviors, abuse, neglect, bullying, and the policy safeguards our employees and our volunteers from any potential accusations. So again, our goal is twofold. It is to prevent things from happening and making sure that it's safe for our children and our youth and vulnerable adults, but it also safeguards our employees and our volunteers against any accusations. Our collective security and trust within this community is paramount for everyone involved. Now let's walk through our roles: parents, employees, volunteers. There's a clear distinction in these guidelines between parental, guardian roles, and church and employee volunteers. Understanding these roles and helping and fostering a safe environment for children and youth is critical. We aim to support parents while ensuring our staff are equipped to protect our youth and our children as well as themselves. This clarity enhances the accountability and trust within the church community. LUMC Safer Sanctuary Policy establishes guidelines for LUMC official operations and in no way is ever intended to advise or regulate how a person acting as a parent or a guardian or other personal role engages in the lives of minors or vulnerable adults. This is for official activities, official functions within LUMC to make sure that those folks who are here are protected as they're interacting with children and youth, but also protecting our youth and our children as they're going through official LUMC functions. So I'd like to walk through a few key definitions and some general principles. In defining key terms is essential in understanding our Safer Sanctuary policy. You'll find these definitions on policy page 4 through 6. Let me first touch on adult. An adult is anyone who's reached the age of 18 years. And then this is also a reference to youth, and that's the definition as well. So when you think about an adult, think of somebody that's reached the legal age of 18. A child, on the other hand, is any individual under the age of 11 years old. That includes infants, toddlers, preschool or elementary age children. At LUMC, a child participates in the children's program until the fall of the child's 6th grade year of school when they move to the youth program. Again, we will touch on the youth definition here shortly. And then the next would be infant or toddler. An infant or toddler generally referred to as a child who's under the age of 3, children who have not entered preschool yet. For a minor is a group of infants, toddlers, or children or youth, as a collective, all under the age of 18 years of old. The next would be paid youth. Paid youth is a youth-aged individual, 12 to 17, who is paid staff member to support LUMC children activities. Paid youth are not considered adults, do not go through background checks, but they do have to watch or participate in this training, but they do not have to have a background check. And they have to understand their responsibility and their role. Paid youth should at least be 3 years older than the children's group that they are assisting. A temporary volunteer adult. That's an individual who volunteers and supports an activity at LUMC involving children, youth, or vulnerable adults who have not completed the Safer Sanctuary training, screening, and background check. These temporary volunteers must have approval from the ministry director and or the activity leader. These could easily be parents or grandparents who are helping occasionally, less than 3 times, probably a calendar year. This individual is to be partnered with a Safer Sanctuary trained adult, a paid adult LUMC staff, or a ministry director as appropriate during that activity. Volunteer adult, a non-paid adult over 18 years of age who is going to be helping at a greater frequency, just 3 times per calendar year. A volunteer adult has met all the ministry director or appropriate leader of the activity, has received a Safer Sanctuary training, and has gone through the LUMC process for background checks, and is an active member of LUMC. A volunteer youth is non-paid. A youth-aged individual, 12 to 17, who is volunteering with children programming at LUMC. A volunteer youth are not considered adults, do not go through a background check, but should be partnered with a Safer Sanctuary trained adult, paid adult LUMC staff, or ministry director as appropriate during this activity. Volunteers should, again, be at least 3 years older than the group they're assisting. A vulnerable adult is a person whose ability to protect himself or herself from violence, abuse, or neglect is significantly impaired through social, physical, or mental disability or an illness. Lastly, youth. This is an individual who's in grade 6 through grade 12. A youth has turned A youth who has turned 18 years of age but has not yet graduated from high school can still participate as a youth member through the end of the summer activities of their graduation year. We established these general principles to guide our missions and operations effectively. Our core values emphasize respect, integrity, and responsibility towards one another. These principles lay the foundation for our commitment to safety. So our general principles for our safer sanctuary fall into a couple different categories. One is the 2 adult rule. In general practice, all activities in person or online where minors and vulnerable adults are participating should have 2 safer sanctuary trained adults involved in the activity. And this includes whether that be, like I said, in person or online. We need at least 2 safer sanctuary trained adults. As appropriate, if it is in person, doors should be left open to major hallways during activities, depending on the activity and the age group in that activity. Transparency, any parent, any guardian, relative, guest, or any other individual may observe an LUMC function. There's a 5 years of age rule for youth. The age of the adult volunteer for youth should be at least 5 years older than the upper end of the age group of the minors being led. For youth volunteers helping in the children's department, that age group should be 3. This does not apply to vulnerable adult volunteer participation. Again, for adults, there's a 5-year age rule when you're working with youth or children. If it's for the youth volunteers, it's a 3-year rule. An adult and youth volunteer should have been involved in the life of LUMC for 6 months before volunteering. Adult to minor ratios. This is general guidance. And again, we're on policy page 7 through 9. This is general guidance. For youth, 12 youth to 1 adult. For children, it's 10 children to 1 adult. And then for infants in the nursery, it's 4 infants to 1 adult. Again, this is a general guidance. Or if it's 13 to 1, let's see if we can find other folks to be able to help out. But again, this is general guidance, 12 to 1 for youth, 10 to 1 for children, and 4 to 1 for infants. For one-on-one meetings, 1 adult with 1 minor or vulnerable adult should be a rare occurrence. However, there may be situations where one-on-one meetings may be necessary. There are guidelines provided in the policy to walk through the best way to go through these one-on-one meetings, why they may occur, and then different ways to protect both the individuals that are involved in that. Gender identity. Any minor or vulnerable adult that expresses a desire to be treated differently for any reason will have a conversation about how to fulfill that request with the ministry director, activity leader, or clergy involving a parent and guardian as appropriate. We want everyone to feel included, as this is an inclusive community. We want to make sure everyone understands their roles to make sure that that youth and those children and that vulnerable adult is welcomed into this community. Bathroom use must be supported by a volunteer of the same sex with guidelines if not available. Parent responsibility, 10-minute rule, please. Arrival times, pickup times, sign-in, sign-out procedures also are involved, also laid out on page 9 of the policy. And then diaper changing, LUMC employees and volunteers should not occur in any area other than the designated diaper changing areas. Digital guidelines for safety. This is a big concern and a growing concern within not just for churches, but also schools and everywhere else. Because in today's digital age, we must establish safe communication guidelines. So we focus on protecting minors in all digital interactions and communication and platforms. Clear protocols help us navigate online engagement within our community safely. And some general guidelines: social media marketing and digital platform and picture postings. Parents and guardians can opt out of faces being posted. They cannot opt out of pictures being taken, but they can ask that their children's face not be visible or have something on top of their face so that they're not recognized. This posting policy only applies to ministry directors, LUMC employees, and or volunteers. And so those are the folks who can post, and those are the ones that can then put that over that. But you must talk to them if you're a parent or guardian, and you have to opt out of them, their faces being posted. Again, you cannot opt out of pictures being taken because some parents do want that, and if it's a group picture, there's no way to be able to take that picture. When it comes to the internet, social media, and communications policy, on page 10, there's quite a bit dealing with email communication guidelines. Ministry director and activity leaders will only use BCC or blind carbon copy when sending mass email communications. Ministry directors, LUMC employees, and or adult volunteers may not communicate one-on-one with any minor without including either a CC to the minor's parent or guardian or a CC to at least 2 other adults who are affiliated with LUMC. Regarding text messaging, LUMC employees or adult volunteers may only send text messages to minors and vulnerable adults concerning basic information, sharing, or simple check-ins. How's your day? Did you win? Etc. If the parent or guardian has approved in writing. Every text message from an LUMC employee or an adult volunteer with a minor and or vulnerable adult must have another adult copied in the text communication. There's many other examples also listed within the policy on page 10 and 11 of the policy. Also on page 11, online meetings. If using a conference call platforms, Zoom, Google Meet, Teams, for a call where LUMC leaders are communicating with minors or vulnerable adults, at least 2 adults shall be a part of that call. 1 adult, the leader of the call, the other a volunteer, and at least 1 adult must be Safer Sanctuary trained. Church accounts should be used for these calls. No personal accounts should be allowed. Activity leaders holding online meetings must ensure that they have documented the identities of all meeting attendees in the attendance list. This list must be kept in a regular course of church business for no less than 90 days. Digital platforms or friends. If a friend were there, again, there's quite a bit of information on page 11, but just very quickly, if a friend request is sent from a child or youth to an LUMC employee or adult volunteer, the LUMC employee or adult volunteer may choose whether or not to accept. If they choose to accept this request, LUMC strongly recommends that the adult notify the child's or youth's parents or guardian. And then lastly, the preservation of digital communication. If an LUMC employee or LUMC volunteer receives digital communication from a minor or vulnerable adult that the employee or volunteer deems questionable, that LUMC employee or volunteer shall end the conversation and notify the LUMC ministry director or clergy as soon as may be reasonable and practicable. The LUMC ministry director or clergy will determine next steps, which may include contacting the minor's vulnerable adults, parents, or guardians, and have a meeting with the minor and vulnerable adult. LUMC employees must not delete any communication from an individual minor or vulnerable adult for 90 days after the contact. Text messages should be held for 30 days. This is all to ensure protection of both the adult, volunteer, or LUMC employee, as well as the child, the youth, or the child, or the vulnerable adult. Everyone that goes through this training that is an adult will have to go through a background check. And these background checks, the whole goal of that is protection and prevention. And one way to make sure that is to do these background checks on all adult volunteers and employees who encounter minors and vulnerable adults. Background checks are to be renewed on LUMC adult volunteers and LUMC employees every 3 years. If a parent thinks they will be volunteering at LUMC, it is best to do this training and to have a background check done proactively, just to ensure that you're able to volunteer. All background checks are confidential, and the policy has a non-exhaustive list of observations on a background check discovery that will limit a volunteer from working as a volunteer at LUMC. You can see some of these on page 13 of the policy. LUMC has zero tolerance for bullying. Any alleged bullying incidents that occur are followed up as appropriate by the ministry director, SPRC member, LUMC employee, or clergy. The policy states, but does not limit it to these examples: what constitutes bullying, what forms of bullying may occur, and procedures for when an incident is suspected to involve bullying and follow-up. And bullying can take many different forms. It can be verbal comments or statements. It can be written comments or statements. It can be physical activities such as hitting, kicking, shoving, spitting, sharing lies, rumors, or gossip, money or property taken or damaged, being threatened or forced to do tasks for the gain of others or through intimidation, comments or jokes, attacks, insults, harassment. This could also be digital media communications, or it could just be in person. And when an incident involves, on page 14 of the policy, there's a procedure that must be followed to ensure that we can find out what has happened and what appropriate steps should be taken. And lastly, there will always be follow-up. In accordance with the elements of Christian living and with the intent of encouraging Christian growth, grace will be extended to any individuals involved in initiating or participating in bullying behavior when there is sincere expression of remorse and intent to make amends. However, repeated incidents of bullying behavior result in remedial action, which may include temporary or permanent removal from LUMC programming. Any questions or concerns should be directed to the ministry director, SPRC member, or LUMC clergy. So please know that we take this very seriously. We will want it's zero tolerance. If it occurs, we will look into it, and we will have follow-up to make sure it doesn't occur again and take appropriate actions, because we want, again, to make this a safe place for everyone at LUMC. Also involved in this policy is transportation and travel. There are many different activities that go on for the youth and children and vulnerable adults at LUMC, and some do occur off of the LUMC campus, and that also includes mission trips. And so as we go through this is going to be more of those day-to-day activities, not so much into the full mission trip activities, but this will be kind of more truly just off-campus activities for LUMC youth and children. So there's transportation guidelines, including LUMC arranged transportation from LUMC campus to the sponsored offsite activities. Driving from home to LUMC for the activity is not considered part of the Safer Sanctuary program, and it is the responsibility of the parent and guardian. So to get to LUMC is not a part of this policy. Ministry directors do have the responsibility to adjust these transportation policy based on the distance, age group of passengers, and activity and cars involved. For example, there are differences between youth and children, youth drivers, and what they can do as well. General transportation guidelines in the policy cover the number per vehicle within leaders. Ideally, there should be 2 leaders present in a vehicle containing minors and vulnerable adults. All passengers must wear a seatbelt that is buckled and operating properly per the passenger age requirements. All passengers and drivers must be buckled for the duration of the trip. And then also on page 16, there's a link to Colorado standards regarding child seats. All drivers of the activity must be known to and approved by the ministry director or activity leader. And unless otherwise arranged directly by a parent or guardian with the ministry director or activity leader, minors are expected to meet at LUMC campus to be transported to the activity. Drivers for the event, transporting minors or vulnerable adults beyond their own family, must be at least 21 years of age. Licensed drivers under 21 may drive their own family vehicle to the event if approved by the driver's parent or guardian and the activity leader ahead of time. Licensed drivers under 21 may not drive additional participants in the activity, excluding siblings of the driver. LUMC employee or volunteer driving minors in a personal vehicle. LUMC employees or adult volunteers should avoid driving a non-related minor or vulnerable adult whenever practical. If the LUMC employee gives a non-related or vulnerable adult a ride home, the following steps have to be considered, and that's on page 17. Drivers must also follow a designated route and should not deviate from that route except for cause of an emergency, road detours, or other reasonable challenges. And lastly, drivers may not use their cell phone when driving. One, it is against the law, but two, we want them to be totally focused on the road and making sure that their passengers get there safely. LUMC employer and volunteer driving non-related minor and a personal event should be avoided with parental consent, and exceptions are within that policy. For overnight travel for minors and LUMC sponsored events, you need to have a signed permission from a parent or guardian. And for each trip, if it's co-ed, at least one male and one female adult volunteer within those ratios. And if it's not co-ed, only volunteers of the same gender may accompany that trip. If it's a hotel, no adult shall be in the same bed as a minor, even if related, and a minimum of 2 minors in the room. For bunk room, large room settings, if a co-ed trip, at least 2 different gender adults should be present in a large room with multiple beds and bedding situation, and there will be bed checks. Communication during an overnight trip. This is always a big question for parents and guardians. How can I reach my child, and what can this look like? So communication during an overnight trip. Parents and guardians of any minor they're going, you'll make sure that they have a general agenda, lodging, departing. The activities must have signed parent releases, medical consent, medical considerations, or reasonable contact information, volunteer staff and drivers. They'll also have a general agenda, lodging plans, departing return times, etc. All of this is on page 18 as well. For cell phone and personal device usage by a minor, this is something that we've seen in the past, and we want to make sure is addressed directly. Personal cell phones and personal devices may be approved by the activity leader or ministry director for overnight trips. Personal cell phones and personal devices are to be the responsibility of the minor if brought with them for the trip. Ministry directors, activity leaders, drivers, and volunteers can limit the time when cell phones and communication devices are used. For example, during a Bible study. If brought on the trip, cell phones and personal devices may not be confiscated during the trip in response to any behavioral opportunity or behavioral disruptions if cannot be taken by a leader or volunteer adult. And parents and guardians are encouraged to understand that minors may not be in contact as regular as normal during these trips. And overnight travel with a vulnerable adult is adjusted per the ministry director or activity leader to fit that situation. Training responsibility and procedures. Training is vital for all ministry leaders and volunteers and church staff. Annual training will occur in the fall to ensure familiarity with the Safer Sanctuary policy. If not able to attend this annual training or volunteer after the training, this online training is provided. Youth volunteers are expected to join the annual training or be able to use this online training as well. Everyone should know their responsibilities in maintaining our safe environment. Once a volunteer has completed the training, background checks, they may support other activities at the church as well, unless directed otherwise by the ministry director or clergy. Support and resources are available for ongoing education and training. If we ever do have an abuse accusation, there will be a quick and responsible response to those allegations. It is because it is crucial for community trust. We will follow established protocols and steps outlined in the policy on page 21 to best address any accusation seriously. If an accusation or an incident occurs with an LUMC employee involved, the investigation of the incident will follow the LUMC employee procedure and policies process as laid out in the LUMC employee procedures and policy handbook. The number one thing we want to emphasize is transparency and fairness are the key to investigating claims of abuse. We value the dignity in individuals involved in any of this situation. And as I close, I just want to say a few things. Together, we can uphold the ideals of this Safer Sanctuary policy. Your involvement and even just your desire to be involved is vital in creating a safe and nurturing environment. And the first step is knowing more about this Safer Sanctuary policy. So let us work together to protect and support our LUMC community. We are grateful for your commitment to LUMC, to the LUMC families, youth, children, and vulnerable adults. So next step. Parents, if you have any questions, as I mentioned before, please find an SPRC member, or you can talk to Lisa Perkins, the Director of Children and Family Ministries, or you can talk to Hannah Lally, the Director of Youth and Young Adult Ministries. Feel free to please reach out if you have any questions. Volunteers, if this is the last thing you have to do, please make sure that you fill out the form as provided by Lisa and or Hannah and turn in with your interest in volunteering. Please mark that you have done this. And that will then begin the background check submission process after you have done this. And then for the youth for watching this, there will be no more background check, but please just make sure you fill out your form. And so again, thank you so much for your time. We truly do appreciate it. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Hannah, Lisa, or SPRC. Thank you.